Well, does everybody, if you have a glass of water, tea, beer, whatever you want, one, thank you all for coming. Again, I'll just reintroduce myself, Nick Dinsmore. I am the host of Beer and Broadband, or the moderator, whatever you want to call me. The point of these, what we do is we obviously like to talk about beer. We like to talk about broadband, but mostly broadband. And we like to have really smart people on, smarter than me, on to talk about varying topics. So one, thank you so much for joining us today. And why don't we just do some introductions so everybody knows who everybody is, and then, hey, we'll jump right into it. So when we start, I'll stop at the start of the top of my screen, which is the man with the beard who resembles somebody on Star Trek. Come on, no, nobody.
Oh, come on. So I'm Justin Roller, CIO for Bonfire Engineering and Construction, and have worked in all things technology in my career. I'm on the state of Colorado's Broadband Deployment Board, so doing grants for the state of Colorado. I worked for Southern Ute Indian Tribe for 13 years in their IT department, helped them start to build their broadband plan, and start to go after some grants, wrote some letters to the FCC on their behalf about RDOF, and generally have been around government and tribal issues for a lot of my career. I used to work for a consulting company for Honor, working on the payment systems for minerals management service back in the day, with Cobell Norton litigation, which was all tribal stuff, and kind of what ended up getting me to Southern Ute. So I've kind of been around kind of tribal issues dealing with the government for a long time. So that's kind of my role with the group, and within Bonfire do all the technology stuff.
All right, thanks for being here, Justin. Let's swing it on over to Dion.
My name is Dion Reynolds. I'm the IT director for the Flambeau Business Development Corporation up here in Wisconsin. I've been here 2 years now. Before that, I was the IT director for Rosebud Sioux Tribe in South Dakota. That's my hometown where I was born and raised. After being born and raised, I joined the Marine Corps for 20 years, and I was in communications and technology while I was in the Marine Corps as well. So I've kind of been around pretty much, all different levels of technology. Really, since I've been here, one of the biggest focuses has been, the broadband. It is just horrible here. We thought it was bad in Rosebud, but they have it like, they don't know how good they have it with their ETC, their people down there, but really slow up here. But I think, we're going to get better here pretty soon.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining. Mm-hmm. And one, thank you for your service too, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
And Jesse, and you're on mute. Just
buddy. My name is Jesse Archer. I'm a Big Pine Paiute tribal member here in the Eastern Sierra, California. I am owner now of my own business, Indigenous Systems Integrators, and a new nonprofit, Numu Networks. We work with tribes on the Eastern Sierra Nevada mountains. We're in one of the deepest valleys in the United States, literally with the highest point and the lowest, all in the same county. And we are super interested in connecting our people. We're doing everything we can and being as creative as possible with making connections for our people and connecting them to important services. So that's kind of what we're all about doing here in the Valley.
And last, but certainly not least, Mariel.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mariel Triggs. I'm the CEO of MuralNet, a nonprofit that works with Native nations in order to design, build, and implement and control really their internet access future. We started in 2017 as a group of volunteers. My own background is half Filipino, half Chilean. My parents came over to this country because of the educational opportunities. I didn't have many choices of career, therefore. Got 2 engineering degrees from Cal and then Stanford. Never wore more blue and gold in my life until I had to spend a year on that Stanford island made lots of friends, as you can tell. But anyways, back in 2017, we worked with an awesome team of folks, a group of volunteers to put together a private LTE network, a network in a box on 2.5 gigahertz using open source cores and basically bringing the cost down to deploy your own network to less than $15,000. Since then, the problems with tribal broadband have changed. We've worked with, we've worked with over 100 tribes on getting access to things like their own spectrum, or with this NTIA grant, trying to make sure that it's working in your favor so you get control of your own institutions, and that the grants are going into your pockets and your interests and not that of your provider. And we've helped deploy more than a dozen emergency and pilot networks during the COVID crisis. So that is us, that is me. I prefer to be on the poll, but I often end up in the board. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. All right, guys, let's jump right into it. So we talked a little bit before this session about some topics from the NTIA grant, importance of sovereignty, things that you really wish vendors would know. We got a couple of different topics we want to cover today, but let's talk about, it's truly the largest elephant in the room. Not really an elephant, I guess, but the NTIA grant, $980 million, obviously is a lot of money. So, and I know there was a lot of deadlines. I know a lot of people were ready for a beer right now. I guess, what have you seen? What have you seen? What have you heard around this coming in? That just how do you think it's going?
You want to start?
I jump in, anybody. This is a very casual discussion, so we can interrupt each other. It's fine. It's really, just want to get your guys' feedback on it. Is obviously, again, it's the 1,000-pound gorilla of what's happening from a funding perspective. And so yeah, why don't you, Dion,
I'd be happy to jump in.
Jesse,
I'd be happy to jump in on that.
Yep.
It is one of the largest chunks of cash that we've ever seen coming in to tribal nations. And I guess not unexpectedly, we had a very short time in which to prepare for this. I could go back even to the CARES Act grant, where tribes had to wait an additional sometimes 3 and 4 months before we even received our federal funding, and then barely getting an extension to actually plan and spend that money. So fast forward to the NTIA grant, very truncated timeline. We had to hustle, and we were lucky enough to have great partners, great teamwork all around to get our NTIA grant in. But I know it was very difficult for a lot of rural tribes, especially like the kinds that we work with. That don't have an IT department, don't have a tribal administrator, don't have a grant writer. You're talking about 3, 4, 5, 6, sometimes whole departments pulling all-nighters, coming together with their aggregated knowledge, trying to get in just for an opportunity to get this money. And some tribes didn't make it. There wasn't enough capacity internally to apply or even get in an application. So it was a rush. It was a mad dash.
Yeah, what have you seen?
Well, ours kind of goes back 18, 20 months ago when that spectrum came out. So, I did a lot of learning, and Mariel was a good teacher during that time. We went out and got the 2.5 gigahertz spectrum through the FCC spectrum, basically giveaway. And we come to find out that in our area, there's also 2 other people who have access to the same spectrum. And with the channels we had and the way things are spread out, the only way to really get the most out of it was to partner with those groups. So we start going down a partnership route, and just like Jesse was talking about, time was of the essence. We had the spectrum. We had partners with 2 couple colleges that had the spectrum that also have the 2.5 gigahertz, and one of the biggest issues was, those partnerships just kind of never really materialize. One of the colleges, they really put a lot of red tape on their spectrum. So we decided to kind of go it without them. But then the other college, without them going, in with it, they didn't feel like it was going to be, much of a solution. So they were kind of pulled out. But at the end of the day, neither of the plans were really working for us, because what we wanted is to get, basically what Mariel talks about is to be kind of the keeper of our own key. So we wanted to have a middle mile service coming into our town rather than having to, pay it off somebody else to have support from another location. And we found a provider, like in the last hour. We were like, our wireless plan fell through, and we had like 3 weeks to put together a fiber to the home option. And it was definitely balls to the walls, let's just say that. And somehow or another we were able, at the final hour, we had it in the night before, but it wasn't midnight where we're trying to figure out how to push, submit. The good thing that we had was, we had a good grant team, 2 really good grant writers that were really critical on everything, including the budget. And they another one that was involved with scoring. So I felt good with that. But
You think the people that are, the whole point of, the whole tribal broadband connectivity program was digital inclusion, right? So do you think in the shortened time frame really actually hampered part of that goal?
I think that, yeah, that what we rolled out, I just don't see a way for it to really be done in a year. And I know they're putting like an emphasis, after reading, the NOFA and everything, that, priority will be giving to those that can finish within a deadline time. But in a fiber to the home project, with us being up here in the north, we're going to hit a freeze. So, during that freeze, we're not going to be able to put nothing into the ground. So it really kind of shortens our deadline even to just get the construction done. So, I don't know if it was really realistic in a lot of ways in certain areas, but, I know that, the middle mile process that we went through is pretty realistic, but we're still going to have a last mile connection if that falls through. So we're kind of, between, a rock and a hard place when it comes to that.
A rock in a frozen tundra, right?
A rock in a frozen ground. It's already starting to get cold.
Mariel, what about you?
There are ways.
Probably a lot colder than Mariel's beer. She hasn't been just kind of like very slowly sipping it over there.
Wow, he's
what I'm gonna
called
say.
you out for nursing your beer. Wow, man,
This is a man who's not even packing. So we will.
I heard you
That's
guys
funny.
really super long podcasts, so I got an extra long beer.
That's
It's
I
actually
got a
I got
backup
a decent
baby
one,
beer
too.
Yeah.
just in case.
Yeah.
I feel like I can take another one. I think you guys are right on. I was actually $980 million is a lot of money, and it's not. When I look at, private schools getting something like 2.3 billion in order to deal with COVID, that's puts things in perspective. When I hear California putting 6 billion into middle mile and last mile efforts, that's saying something. And it was huge. It was the first time on the federal level I've seen them recognize tribal broadband in Congress as something that they want to invest in. And a lot of the parts of it that were difficult were put in because it was written into the law that was passed at the end of the year in 2020. That year we all want to forget.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know if you guys remember, but the CARES money, like it was that you had to spend it all by the end of 2020, but this law passed with just a few days to go to extend that for another year. My feeling is that that's going to happen again with the next infrastructure bill, where it's already been written in that it's going to go from, I think, 1 year to 4 years extension. So you don't have to, it's more realistic. The 60-day window to apply was also put in by that original law. It was also supposed to come out in February, the NOFO, but that took a while. I'm really impressed by this NTIA team, that this was different than any other grant that I've seen, and that it was written for tribes. It was, it didn't have a lot of the rigmarole, or, you know, when you have a page limit of 20 pages per side of the grant for the, you know, actual deployment and construction side, and then the other side for the digital inclusion and adoption. That was pretty neat. They offered a ton of support. They listened to different tribal leaderships and such, and had huge listening sessions that I've never seen tribal consultation at that level. Like, they really did synthesize it and change things. So I look forward to more money being invested in tribal broadband. There's $2 billion currently assigned to tribal broadband in the bill that came from the Senate to the Congress, and that would be, you know, a game changer. And also the states investing in the broadband efforts of tribes. It was a mad dash. We're a nonprofit that specializes, and we want to support the smaller tribes that often miss these opportunities because they don't have the internal capacities and departments and people power, like what Jesse was talking about. Dion has your Wonder Twin grant writers who can do anything. I was quite impressed by them. And Dion also hammers at things, and, you know, no fear about calling anyone up and just asking them, like, for this, you know, to be a straight shooter.
If you want to shout out who the grant writers are, your fans are, feel free. You know.
This is where you flash their numbers so they can
Yeah,
get cited.
Yeah, their cards.
You're awesome. You're awesome. You're
Yeah,
But it
Christina
was-
Recontre and John Young.
Oh,
nice.
say it again. John Young and who?
Christina Recontre.
Okay.
She helped. They both helped out whenever we did the spectrum as well. Christina was the one that was kind of she's just happy-go-lucky. I don't know if you remember her.
I probably, yeah, actually, I think I do, because when we were dealing with, you guys have an interesting map. And there are ways around that. Your partnerships, I'm glad that you kept to your guns and, like, are, you know, you want to be the keepers of the keys. And now you can trade spectrum with those partners on a peer-to-peer level, rather than them giving you something. This is, let's have a fair exchange. We have assets, you have assets, make something happen. And I like it when you're in that power position.
So who do you think's gonna, I mean, obviously, I mean, it's funny you say that, comparing the money, because right now that you say it, like, that's not as much money as, you know, there's been thrown around. From a prioritization view, though, I mean, who's, you know, I guess, what's your feeling on who is going to actually get awarded the money? Like, what, you know, obviously, if there's, you know, situations or scenarios that are, you know, as Dion mentioned, maybe can't even be done within the time span. Like, what do you think is going to be the?
One of the things that we kind of went into, and I don't know if this is right, wrong, or indifferent, but this is what one of our elder grantsmen over there, his name is Brian Gucci. He kind of really, you know, throttled us back. We had you know, some other people that were consulting and talking with us, and they wrote quite a few grants out of this, and a lot of theirs were like shooting for the stars with it, $50 million, you know, max it out to everything, you know, let's throw up 18 towers and, you know, fiber to the home, and let's do it all. I mean, that's what they're asking for. Whereas kind of what we were doing, and it, you know, time was of an essence as well, but we ended up going low, like we're more in the 25 million area, which is still a lot, right? But we wanted to try to keep it realistic and not like go too high, because we do feel there's probably gonna be another round. But, you know, I don't know like how that works. If you got some tribes that are shooting for the stars and some that are being realistic, so I don't know if that's gonna count, but that's what our our senior statesman was telling us. He said, let's keep it something, you know, feasible.
Well, I
And I
hope
don't know
that
how
they-
everybody else feels about that, but go ahead.
No, sorry. I really do hope they do, like you said, and come with that other round, because I think there were some tribes have been trying to figure this problem out for years. And so we're kind of a little ahead of the game. And so maybe in a position to put, you know, a 25 or $50 million grant together. And some tribes were just trying to figure it out. So they're more asking for money to do engineering, you know, and maybe they need $2 million to do engineering to figure out what do they need 25 or do they need 30 million? So hopefully you know, hopefully that other tranche of money is coming. And I think the other thing is like worrying that if there isn't, hopefully there is $1 billion, you know, $980 million worth of applications at least that come in this round, so that they don't say, oh, well, we only got 800 million in this first go, so we don't need more money because they didn't ask. Because it's like it's just the timeframes were so short. How were people going to put together financial pro formas? I mean, you don't even know where you're getting backhaul from and all these other questions. It's like you couldn't do that in the amount of time allotted to go ask for $40 million. Like you said, realistically, like you could do it, but you would just be throwing numbers. I mean, it's really tough in just a few, like in that kind of time frame to do something that big and holistic.
I actually seen a document today that broke down the, I don't know if you've seen this, Mariel, but I think there's $5 billion in grants that were submitted and 250 or 260 applications out of the 980 billion.
I wanted to play high-low.
Oh,
Loser does 100 push-ups.
You totally blew it.
I totally did, because I was actually going to go, I was going to choose about 4.5 or 4. I was actually doing it in my head, and originally I thought it was going to be 2 billion and several hundred applications. About, if you think that almost, I think 419 tribes had spectrum claimed over their lands. And then you figure about half of those can get their stuff together in time to at least apply for the 500,000 to do studies, including the engineering studies that you're talking about, Justin. And by the way, nice job. The folks that we worked with to do engineering studies, it usually came to about 2 million. It's almost like you know what you're doing, Justin.
We did a little of that, yeah.
But it's very much oversubscribed. I thought it was going to be 2 to 1. Another colleague was 10 to 1. When I saw the actual prices people were putting on things, there's some broadband manager jobs out there that I might quit mine and, you know, get the $250,000 for the year in order to coordinate their broadband efforts. That's not true. I'm not leaving MuralNet. I hope my board doesn't hear this. But
sarcasm.
5 billion sounds about right. Don't forget that those who score high enough, by the way, will be thrown automatically into the US Treasury money, that $10-20 billion bucket. So there's going to be some that are fast tracked. And it sounds like, Dion, it sounds like you guys might be on that fast track.
So what are the parameters to get fast tracked?
Oh, well, you have to get above 70 points, and there's a rubric. I was a teacher for a while, and I spent the last week and a half grading people's grants. But if you get over 70 points, then you will get your NTIA grant. There's a curing process. So if there's some issues and stuff, they'll come back to the tribes and, you know, help you fix whatever issues that they see. I still don't know why they call it curing. I don't know if the grants are ill or if it's
not like meat. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm like. You know, I'm all for my processed meat.
They're trying to hang the money to see if the money gets better over time. Maybe.
There's some things I hope they can like redline to be sure. But if you get into the upper echelons, if you get well above 70, and maybe that's where we do our high-low. I say if we get above 87 points, then you get kicked over to US Treasury, which is great because with the US Treasury monies, there's a lot less hoops you have to jump through when it comes to compliance and such. And yeah, you're basically fast tracked. You get the check written out in mid-December or something like that.
So what should the tribes that do get awarded, what should they worry about?
Supply chain issues.
Yeah.
Fiber. I can't find a Cat 6 CPE for the life of me right now. I see fiber as being an issue. I see some of the radios. I see choosing the right equipment. We worked with a lot of folks, and at first it was like, this is the exact radio we need. I'm like, think about it when it comes to LTE and 5G. We're right on the precipice of, you know, we're launching 5G networks now. It's here. Do you really want to be saying what you're going to do in a year? I see open source and open RAN systems, open radio access networks. These cellular devices are turning in like almost like they're like the cell phones themselves. You can like download apps. I mean, you look at what Freedom Fi is doing with Helium, and I think I've seen Althea Networks and some other folks where your your radios can be selling extra capacity as roaming for other carriers, and they pay you in cryptocurrency. Like that's a thing. The virtual network providers, where you could put up the radio equipment, you can maintain the equipment, but people get a CPE and you choose which provider you want to. So even though you basically have one pipe coming in, like what Jesse has over at Lone Pine Paiute Shoshone Reservation, you could have several different internet service providers selling their services on that one pipe. And a lot of these are unproven or they're not very well developed. And where I see the wild, wild west is Alaska. The highest need and the least amount of connectivity is Alaska. You want challenge? You think that the ground freezes over in Wisconsin?
Yeah, I was gonna say, go to
Yeah.
The ground
Alaska.
freezes over and the lights go out. So
Yeah. Yep.
and there's what I saw going on up there was a lot of very innovative things that for the most part are unproven. So my big advice, or what I would warn people to do, is if you're going to do equipment, get open RAN equipment, the equivalent of an Android phone and not an Apple phone, in order to see who wins out and what technologies wins out. I think I'm forever scarred. I remember being 8 years old and trying to get our beta system to work and then going over to Blockbuster and it was all VHS within a few years. Like, what am I going to do? And beta, by the way, was a better
beta
product.
was better for the record.
Yes,
It was
but
better.
marketing.
Yeah.
So I don't try to predict that future.
Yeah. It's so what about, okay, so those are some things to worry about. Anything else from your guys' perspective? I mean, obviously the supply chain issues are going to be run all the way into, probably 2022, 2023. I mean, despite what some people say in the news, the pandemic is not over. It's still going on. So, these issues will continue. So should people be trying to pre-order? Should they be trying to are there any steps people should be taking now, even before it's a risk, right? Like, hey, may get the money, may not get the money. The things they should be trying to think about now.
I think the one other risk that Mariel touched on before, though, that's important is the tribes making sure that you're not getting taken advantage of by a provider that's coming in and saying, get us this money so we can build our network. It needs to be the tribe's network. And that I think is one of the things that you still see people getting told is like, no, you get the money and we'll build a last mile network for you. And it's like, no, this needs to be your asset. And I think that's there's still people out there trying to get tribes to give them their money, that this is, should be an asset for the tribe and for their future, not for the providers. And that's still, I think, it's going to be going on. As long as there's money out there, people are going to be trying to take advantage of it.
Well, that's a good straight man opening for my next question, which is, what should people know about when working with tribes, right? There's a lot of vendors out there. There's a lot of service providers. There's a lot of people. And whenever there's a lot of money, there's a lot of interest, right? So, what should be people, what should they know about working with tribes?
Well, let me jump in right there and say this time crunch is going to have a big thing to do with it. The supply chain is going to have a big thing to do with it. So you're going to have vendors with a little bit of validity behind them saying, hey, look, inventory is going quick. You got to act now. You got to strike while the iron is hot. And, so you have to come see me.
It's like a car salesman. Come on, right now, come here.
This is always the case with tribes. We are under constant pressure. And I think for ourselves, we need to know that our vendors, while they may have some similar goals to ourselves and even our partners, they are from a different perspective and have different overall objectives, even though they're there to help us. But the second part, the big part of your question, I think, was what do I wish vendors knew more about tribes?
Yeah.
I would flip that around and say that I in my fantasy land, I wish vendors knew more about themselves, or to say this better, understood what they didn't know about tribes. To ask one single person to understand all 575 plus individual unique cultures that are all over the country, that's an impossible task. So I think it's more realistic to say, hey, there's no way I'm going to be able to understand Indian country or Native American tribes in any comprehensive way. I think they need to approach each individual nation as the unique cultures that they are, and then appreciate them for those unique perspectives. I mean, in my own valley right here, you can have languages change every 15 miles. And they sound similar, but they're different, and perspectives, and even governments can be wildly and entirely in different structures. So what works on the East Coast or the Midwest with a tribe and their government may not even be legally possible on the West Coast with the way our governments are set up. So I guess that's what I would say is, if I could talk to my vendors, is be like, you're dealing with a brand new scenario and a brand new case with every tribe.
That's very insightful. It makes me think that, a lot of companies and, culture and values of a company are often thrown around very loosely.
Oh man, there's all kinds of like corporate trainings where you can go find your tribe. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can pay money to go learn cultural values that are mined from indigenous nations and then monetized in the corporate world.
Yeah. I think it's, to your point though, it's, I guess I'm curious, do you look for, and I use the term, there's vendors and there's partners. Partners mean that there's reciprocal, you both are in it to win it, so to speak, versus a vendor is somebody who is simply doing you a service and not, they're a vendor, right? I'm curious.
Well, that's a tough one, but I would say we've had good success with our partners. And like I said, that's a very distinct, I like that you define that between vendors and partners, but we try to find partners that have similar core values.
Agreed.
But more importantly, partners who are willing to risk as much as we are. They need to understand that we are in the community, like your local, the tribal nations, the people that these vendors are working with. They're risking everything in their tribes. They're trying to maneuver through political avenues and fiscal and monetary and grant and all these different things. And they are out there in the community risking it all to bring internet to their people. And so if tribes can find a partner or partners willing to come into their community who will say, you know what, we're going to put our name on there right with you guys. So if you fail, we fail, and we're not going to let you do that. I think that's I don't want to say that's the answer to all of them, but that's one approach that we try to take at ISI and Numu Networks, is really trying to find out what the core values are of the community that we're in, and then find the partners that align with that and are willing to go the distance with us.
I think a lot of people forget that broadband, at the end of the day, broadband's technology, but broadband's about people. And the whole point of what broadband does is, and we talk about digital equity and connectivity, we sit here on a Zoom call, right? Honestly, we're privileged. We're privileged to be able to have this conversation, to be able to have a video conference. Yeah, and again, I was thinking of that. You're talking about the frozen ground. So when I lived in Hawaii, we had to try to blast through lava rock, to try to get fiber and lay things. I get those are, I think a lot of times we forget. And Jesse, I get you. I take your point to heart that it is a community, and that's what I think people forget sometimes. The vendors sometimes forget, right? Is there other things, I guess, you guys would say, hey, if I could educate the people that are working and trying to support this initiative that, you guys are all putting your heart and soul into, what else would you tell them?
I can share one that a tribal member told me, because I was asking for advice. I was like, I can't get through to these people in cultural. What do I got to do? They don't want to talk to me. They don't want to work with me. And what do I got to do to get bridge the gap? And they said, well, maybe you should try talking less and listening more. And I think just in general, that was a tribal member telling me that, and that was her advice on how to reach out. But I think that's something that companies come in and they go, let us tell you how we'll solve your problem. And it's maybe you should come in and find out a little bit about what's going on and what does the tribe want? Does the tribe want to does the tribe want to try to run their network? Do they want to be an ISP? Do they not want to be an ISP? Are they just looking for somebody? Like you should, go ask the questions and let them tell you how they want it to look instead of you telling them like, here's how we'll solve it for you. And I think that goes to like the sovereignty issue that kind of comes out of all of this in the end.
Dion, do you want to get in on this? Because I really want to build on that. Justin, I think you hit it on the spot, but I feel like to speak to the vendors, if we're speaking to the vendor audience now, if you as a vendor want to have success, then I would recommend doing just what Justin said, finding out what is important to that community, and then letting them offer up, tell them what you can do, but then let them come up with their own creative solutions, because then that's going to build in ownership and buy-in. And, honestly, they're probably going to come up with, whoever's in that local community is going to come up with a way more creative solution or application to that technology than a standard provider would.
I can't tell you how much equipment I see just hanging on the poles out there of something that, this should work. And then because it doesn't match the community, it's not used. And it comes down to that bottom line, the values. And oftentimes what I see with vendors is they're not using the right bottom line. The bottom line isn't always a dollar sign. Sometimes it's time. Sometimes it's who's it connecting. You don't want to connect the most households. You want to connect those that have nothing. Someone might have some cell phone, service, and they have to hang halfway outside their window, but at least they have something. You want to go the next one over and make that neighborhood be connected, even though it's just 12 homes and not 100 that you can get with the radio somewhere else. And it's they want to know you. Professor Begay at Northern Arizona University once told me something. When I'm meeting with new communities, listen for sure, watch. People are telling you their story. And if you're talking, you're not hearing. Tell them who you are as an individual. Tell them what you are offering and tell them how much it is, because nothing's free. Even if I think it's free, it's not. There's something that is exchanged. And I would say this is running a nonprofit. We work with a lot of big tech companies that are like, oh, we're giving this away. I'm like, no, you're not. You're greenfielding. You're testing the equipment. And how much would you pay a lab to do this in Iowa? That's their core business. That should be paid to the tribe, or at least the equivalent of that. And we also need to worry a little bit about what Jesse was saying earlier about what we don't know about ourselves. Our outside values are embedded in the software and in the network architecture. And I can go all geeky on you guys, but Justin's face is like begging me not to.
No, actually,
so
let's go down. I'm curious.
You want the rabbit hole?
Yeah.
Look at billing. Look at the embedded ideas of how you support your network. An individual subscription fee with tiered systems. That would go against a lot of community values that I've worked with. The idea that somebody should get more than others because they can pay more money. Or the idea that this isn't a utility that should be supplied for free. If you look at what I posit here is that if you look at how communications in general move through a community, your network should mimic that. So, for example, whether it's mesh or if it's like 1 point, broadcasting everywhere, or one of my favorites is I was doing site surveys up in Alaska, and the main points of communications were the flyers up in the native store, the tribal office, and the laundromat. Great. Now I know where to put Wi-Fi hotspots. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So look at actually how the community interacts, listen, run things by the knowledge keepers, the elders, the tribal leadership, those who know, those who can translate. Because no community is the same. Maybe you know one community really well, but that doesn't mean you're going to be able to talk to leadership or elders in another community.
It's actually fascinating. I mean, design, it makes so much logical sense, but it's, saying it like design, engineer it for the way the community actually communicates.
This actually reminds me of because
it's the beer.
I didn't have much time to prep, but I did get to listen to a few of your guys' podcasts beforehand, and this really reminded me around two of them that were particularly interesting to me around open access, and the other one was monetizing the pipe. But around open access, there was you had some really interesting guests on there, and I really think they hit the nail on the head because, and I don't want to, chop up what you guys said, but basically like an open access model can really, like, how do we do this? How do we make money? Maybe you have to be truly altruistic to have an open access model, or you have to run it like the Europeans or things like that. This is where I think tribes are uniquely in an advantageous position to do things just like this, by the nature, or by really the forced requirement of us having these constitutions or Americanized governments. One of the results of those things is that we had to have economic development corporations. And not to get too down in the weeds, but we have our goals are not the same. Let's say, how do I say this? Our I don't want to call them stockholders. That is not the wrong thing, but our stakeholders are not the same as a stockholder, right? Our community is not interested. I don't want to say ours, but many communities may not be interested in turning a profit. They may be more interested in providing free high-speed access to their entire community. And whether or not they turn a profit is not their priority. It's the fact that now their kids can participate in distance education. They can make medical appointments online or participate in their governments, which they might not have been able to do. So money and profits is many times super far down on the road, and then trying to communicate just that perspective with the vendor who was coming from a culture of, well, I gotta look at my profit margins here.
Right.
I mean, no matter what, I could say, do you understand what I'm saying? And yeah, I understand the words that you're using, but they might not still understand. We're not really trying to make a dollar here. We're trying to connect this family over here who their kids need to go to school. So yeah.
The purpose is different, right?
Very much.
Yeah. Well, how do you, well, I guess before I move on, any other feedback for vendors that, which is, I think, clearly some very insightful commentary that I hope people listen to. Dion, anything from you?
Yeah, I just think on the other side of the coin, from what I've witnessed since this all came out was, we had one organization, I'll leave names out of it, but they're a larger organization in the whole nation, basically come in and say, hey, you guys are gonna, you got a chance to get all this money. And before, up to that point, they didn't want really to come up, because we tried to partner with them to get them to bring services onto the tribe here, because we feel like this other organization that's serving us now is about to go under. So we're looking out. We've been working at this for 18 months. And we've been reaching out to vendors, and there wasn't really a lot of interest. But as soon as, the NTIA grant hit, wow, I was getting calls, like, hey, why don't we? So, okay, how does this partnership look? How does this work? Is there going to be, we're going to go in with this grant on you. Is there going to be subsidies on our side? Is there going to be, how do we work out this partnership? So it's, it's truly a mutual thing. And no, you're going to have access to the greatest network in the United States, and it's going to be fast, and that's how it's going to work for you guys. We're going to give you the service, and you're legit. And that just wasn't, it sounded good. I mean, people get fast internet, yeah, but at the same time, we just had a large network that's across America was serving us right now, and they're not doing so well. And whenever that hits that point, we don't do so well either. So, being the keeper of our own key, being the, that it was one of our goals going into it. And like I said, as far as the vendors go, they're following the money, as pretty much everybody else said. But I think it's important, for tribes to really understand like their strategic goals, and actually figure out this is what they want. Because there's going to be people, car salesmen, like you're talking about, saying, oh yeah, we can provide that. We can provide you whatever you want. Just, come to us. I mean, I had a person trying to sell me some software to run a network, and I don't even got a network yet. How's this all go together? It's like, well, once you get it, it's a turnkey solution. And no, we're not there yet. And so, I mean, I guess, for us, and for this tribe here, having that, what we want already in place prior to the vendor getting there has really helped us out.
I don't want to walk on your stuff, but that just brings me back to that monetizing the pipe, which is, there was something also in that episode that really struck with me, and that is what we could be looking at as ISPs or tribes if we were to lay all that down, lay down our infrastructure, and then see what happens after that. And so what I really thought was interesting is that in the future we're going to have so many different service providers. Our customers are going to have millions of options to choose. And I think it's more important, and whoever said that on that episode, I think it's more important that we own our own infrastructure, and because that really sets the tone for our future. And if we have it, then we can control it. So thank you, Dion.
So how do we, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, just pretty passive income. I was a nationwide provider that we would all recognize the name, that should go unnamed, would be like, oh, give us free space on your towers, and you know what, we'll maintain it for you. These aren't cats, these aren't cows. It's like, how much maintenance does it take on a tower? It's not going to walk away. So there's a certain level of respect that I think folks, as they walk into different tribal communities, there's been some good checks I've seen, but in this scramble, there's also been a lot of bad agreements signed.
Seems like it's the, like how do you get past the morass, the politics of it all, to truly get things done, do the right thing, right? Get things done the way that you want them done. And and so I guess I look at the timeline and the grants, and I mean, I get, obviously 2020 was nutty, but it's great that the money is there, but the way it was done, it just keeps coming back to, like, did it hurt things too? Right? Like, did it really hurt trying to get things done the right way? And maybe there's no right way. Maybe it's just, at the end of the day, like, we have a deficit, we have problems, we need to get technology out to people faster than that's really humanly possible right now. So we're doing the best we can.
Another part, kind of along the tower thing you were just talking about, Mariel, that it's also in the land, the rights of ways and easements, they're looking for that, perpetual right, perpetual easements, forever. Hey, give us, that's not the way it works no more.
I love the fake ownership where they're like, okay, it's your infrastructure, but we want an exclusive IRU. No, that's like the classic, and I'm sure you folks have seen this. This will be 51% owned by the tribe and 49% owned by some outside investing firm, but the outside investing firm has 5 seats on the voting board and the tribe has 3.
Yep.
That's a solid transition right into the old moving past politics thing. Because I was looking at our topics, and I'm like, moving past politics. No, everything's politics on the tribe.
So how would you describe, I mean, and not to get political, but I mean, hey, we live in a very political world. A lot of lunacy. I mean, what should be, I mean, politics of the tribe, I don't know, but I mean, politics of the tribe, I assume, are very different than the politics of, the federal government, state government. I mean, Jesse, you mentioned several things about different components. How is it different? Like, what are the things that are going on internally to the tribe that are, impacting the vision and purpose of trying to get more broadband to people?
Well, I think we're uniquely advantaged and disadvantaged in many different ways. I'm trying to think of a metaphor here, and Mariel's the teacher, so she would have one just like that. She'd be, oh, it's just like this situation here. Always has one of those, so I got to think of one. If you've ever had Thanksgiving dinner and your entire extended family is sitting at the table and you have a political conversation, you're going to have a wide range of views. And if you were to try in that 1 hour to try to condense that and get everybody going in one direction, it's next to impossible. So to understand that we're dealing with many different families, many different family units, at least in these smaller tribes that I'm experienced with. I can't speak for all tribes, But that's, I mean, getting past politics, it's all built in, it's baked in, and it was really forced upon us, to be honest with you. The governmental systems that we have now to choose leadership, to choose laws that govern us, they were not chosen by us. They were forced upon us, especially here in California. I think around the 1930s, around the IRA times, Indian Reorganization Act, the federal government was going around shopping around their constitutions and saying, basically, if you, a group of Indians, want to be recognized by America and our great white father in Washington, D.C., then you need to sign this document that proves and tells us that you're Indian. So in addition to doing that, we had to accept these governing structures around us that they're not indigenous. They are foreign to us. So to give an example over here in my area, we were one of the last cultures to be touched by Western civilization. We are bordered by mountains, desert, and desert. Literally the highest mountain in the country and Death Valley. You're not getting in here unless you know the trail to get in here. So, by the time, folks got in here, I mean, we're talking about mid 1800s. And then we've got two genocidal campaigns funded by the federal and state governments that almost wiped out our entire populations. And then to come in with another foreign government that is forced upon us. I mean, we're only talking about maybe close to 100-ish years where we are now getting our feet, learning how to work within these colonial governmental structures. It's hard. Yeah.
Just the bottom line is politics is part and parcel of everything that goes on.
Yeah. Man,
let's jump to a final topic because it's hard to believe, but we've already been talking for like 40 minutes, so 45 minutes. Let's talk about technology. So I know, Mariel,
I am nursing the beer.
You're nursing that beer really, really slowly. I have another one I got another one right here. So let's talk tech. So we have some very smart engineers and technology people on the phone. So there's obviously, the way in which you deliver broadband, lots of ways: fiber, wireless, and Elon Musk satellite. There's a lot going on. And I assume in a lot of their proposals, of trying to use this funding, there's a lot of mixed technology. So what should, I guess, the communities be thinking about from a technology view, or should they care? Should they care about the how should they really be more focused on just the result? Mariel?
I'll jump right in again then.
Do it.
Because
he's fired up, man.
I am ready for this. I think this relates to what Dion was saying about how we go after it. I think some of the tribes that we've been working with are a little bit, we're ahead of the game. We've done our feasibility studies, multiples of those, and network engineering plans, and a lot of pre-planning to be where we're at, to get into that 70-point rank, to put us into the Treasury funding. And I think this relates back to the NTIA grant, Dion. There's a point system. And if you work with other tribal nations, you can gain more points. So I guess where I see wireless and fiber working is, I don't think there's anybody in the country who can justify why we need fiber more than indigenous nations. But we are not in urban or populated areas. So building fiber out there is not, it doesn't make a lot of sense to make money. So we need to build fiber where it makes sense. But then also there's so many rural areas, we have to be able to shoot wireless connections all the way out there to get people connections that they need. So if I'm going to give a quick example, we've got three different licenses or waivers from the FCC. Thank you, MuralNet, for the help with that. And I think we're a bit unique because while we do have, in some of these cases, I don't want to name names, but while one reservation has an FCC license, they'll have a waiver in an area miles away, and it's not contiguous land. And I think the reason how that can be done is with really good justifications. So if you can basically justify that you've been on the land and that you still use it for that amount of time, well, then you can extend your networks. And that's where I think fiber and wireless can really work is, well, I don't want to say this without making enemies, but we
Have a
can
beer.
extend or observe our traditional borders, if you will. We have the ability. Many of the tribes here in California, they were put on reservations that are a square mile, 1 square mile. You can't tell me that people that lived there for 15,000 years only lived in that one little square mile spot.
Right.
I mean, there's evidence hundreds of miles in every direction. So justifications, I think that's what works right along.
Do you think when it comes, obviously there's, higher cost, lower cost ways to get things, but I wonder when I look at, all the activity, and this is across, all kind of the goal of trying to drive more broadband globally. Is it looking at the future, right? Are designs looking at the future to know fiber obviously can do a lot of things. And is by far, you can do a lot more applications. Wireless is amazing. You can do a lot of things with wireless. Do you feel like right now, what's more important, when you're designing networks and thinking about trying to implement technology? Is it, hey, I need access in the next 12, 24 months? Or is it, hey, I'm thinking about the next 10 years? And this is also like, the Elon Musk argument too. Like he's also, everybody throws out different arguments of why and when and all that. I'm just curious, like from a tribal perspective, what do you guys think?
Well, when we've worked with tribes, I think the answer has to be all, and we have to be creative with every single tribe, because the tribes are stuck like on these places that have the least density, which makes things hard to pay for and justify financially. They're in the worst geographies. So there's trees everywhere, or there's canyons, mesas, mountains, Death Valley, like all of these different things that you have to contend with. And I think so saying like it's a one size fits all from reservation to reservation and area to area just doesn't make any sense. I think you have to come in, because there's certain providers that come in and they're like, fiber is the only answer. And to me, like, you have to come in with an approach that says, we're going to look at the area, we're going to find out what the tribe wants. And then I think you have to tailor a solution. Because if there's 5 people that live up a canyon and you're like, well, that's an allotment for one thing. So you have to know something about like even tribal lands, like that's an allotment. Nobody else is ever building up there because that's their land. That's not even tribal land. It's an allotment. So that's different. And there's only going to be those families up there. We're not probably going to run fiber up there. So we'll get those guys with wireless, or maybe Elon Musk and Starlink or something like that. If it's hard to get them, if they're in the bottom of a canyon, maybe Starlink makes sense there. I don't know. But like, I think just saying it's like a one size fits all is really hard, because the terrain is so hard. If you're in Wyoming, it's different than Alaska, it's different than Utah. And you've got to be flexible. And I think that's one of the biggest things that sometimes companies forget is its flexibility and creativity. Like I think Jesse said that earlier, you have to be creative and maybe working with those tribes to figure out what are the right creative solutions to solve these problems. And it should be a mix most of the time. I think that's one thing I worry about with the grants is you start to see some of the grants creep in with this stuff that really favors fiber to the home, which is awesome if you could do it. But like, if you get these places where it's 100 miles to 12 houses, fiber to the home is crazy. And then it's like, are you going to leave them out because they can't get fiber to the home? So I think that's where you gotta, like, there's got to be a little bit of more thought and nuance to it than just saying like, the Indian country is the same as the rest of the country. And even in Colorado, like, people will confuse the Ute Mountain Ute and the Southern Ute, and they're right next to each other, and they're 2 Ute tribes, and like they're very different. Their terrain is very different. Their tribal government is very different, and they're right next to each other. They're sister tribes, and they're very different. And people will forget that because they're like, I don't know, they both say Ute, and they must be the same.
I can go off on this.
Please do.
All right, I drink.
You've been quiet, so.
Yeah, that's never said. Going to Justin's point, I was just in Shishmaref This is a community that, because of climate change, they're going to have to move eventually. It's already happened to several communities in Alaska, Council, Solomon, all sorts of different things for different reasons. But basically, it doesn't make sense to fiber to the homes when a home's going to be disappearing fairly soon. Or if it's a migratory culture where, you know, they're only there for like a certain season or something. And we need to embrace those complexities because there's not one solution. And so what I try to do is strategize, and this is where I've been very impressed with, you know, actually everyone in this room. You got to get that long-term goal of what you want. We're in a situation right here, there's a window where money goes directly to tribes and your capital costs are basically zero. So this is when you build the expensive yet long-lasting stuff. This is where I put in the fiber, preferably the middle mile. Fiber to the home's great, but if you don't have solid middle mile, then this is the time to probably do it. This is where you put in towers, and you don't put up, I'm so sorry, the guide towers that are holding up like one cambium radio, like great, no, this is when you want to build something that's going to be able to be one of your main producers. Like I think Jesse and Justin pointed out, don't worry, Dion, I'm sure you pointed out things too. But this is where Justin and Jesse mentioned, like, your revenue generation isn't going to be from your population. Your revenue generation might be from renting space on a tower. And so making sure that you have those opportunities and you're looking for those funds, because we do live in a world where we need to at least try to zero out one way or another. So once you have that long-term plan, okay, this is what I have in this one window where I get to control where the money goes, and I can start building those things that'll be long lasting. Put the pipe in the ground, put the conduit in the ground, and shove some fiber through it. And I'm saying for this as head of an organization that's known for fixed wireless solutions. Nah, I barely wrote any of that. You want fixed wireless solutions, however, they're much cheaper. They're between 2 to 12% of the cost that I've seen for people who are making these mixed networks. And if you want to find funding elsewhere, that's great. But if you want to find funding now, you just gotta know that you can't, under the rules of this game for the NTIA grant, you can't have two different parallel systems that are going to be connecting this one home. I can't justify a wireless and a wired solution, a fiber to the home solution to reach this one home. So I have to figure out how to break that up. And this is something that you want to build, but remember, you can use any pipe to connect that to the World Wide Web. So this is where I see a lot of last mile solutions being put in when there's situations where people need connectivity now, and either funded through federal grant money or not. You can connect it to any pipe. You can do the LEO solution. You can do the OneWebs or the Starlinks. If anyone can tell me how I can get Starlink to let me hook up a whole private LTE network, I'm listening. OneWeb will sell enterprise though. And then you can have that Band-Aid. I love me my LEO, but I don't see that as a long-term solution. At least I'm not counting on it. I'm not betting my dog on it. But it is something that I think will get us through the year or 2 years that we need in order to get fiber to the home or to get fiber to the community. And the other part of it, strategizing wise, is it's great if you own the infrastructure to the end of your reservation. You control that pipe and you can connect any pipe to it. And this is where the state initiatives might come in, where you try to get redundant pipes to you. But the fact is there's only one group owning the pipe into your reservation. You are still beholden to them. And I have recently seen this, and I have never seen this before, where a middle mile company was trying to charge a tribe to deliver service to their pipe, but also to get that to the nearest city. But then they had to pay from the nearest city to another city. So they actually had 2 backhaul bills. I've never seen that before, to 2 different companies. I don't know what to do with that. But I do know that you want to get to an exchange point. You want to get to one of the internet hotels where you basically can shop around from 5 different wholesalers legitimately, not needing an open access network, because not everything is an open access network, even though they are called that.
That's true.
And lastly, with that overall strategizing, make sure it's designed around you. Some of the weirdest places, like, you don't just want to build transit with one of your partners who are putting in long haul fiber. You need handoffs. And if there's only a handoff every 50 miles, how is that helping you connect people if you can only tap into the line every 50 miles? And it's still a long haul, a trek to get it to your communities. So get that overarching plan. We're no longer playing checkers. It was nice when, it wasn't nice. 3 or 4 years ago, there wasn't that much interest in tribal broadband. You had a lot of people, giants really, who have been fighting that fight for like 20 plus years. But now everybody wants a hand in. So now we're playing chess. You got to think about the federal monies that you're getting. I don't think there's going to be much federal monies given directly to tribal broadband after this, after another year. Things will go through the state. So you're going to you want to see what kind of relationships you have within the state and what you can get built through state money. And then you're going to have to see like, okay, what can I pony up and what's going to be my long-term solution for reliable backhaul? Go ahead, go with the LEO solutions, go with the, you can have the geos and like just deal with the latency issues or whatever, although it's mostly maxed out, but have a long-term plan to get a pipe that you control to an exchange point. Because I'd rather be buying my backhaul at Costco than at my local liquor store. I can't tell you how much I pay for this.
There's the teacher.
Awesome. Well, guys, it's again hard to believe we've been going on for a bit, and part of the goal of this our episodes are to educate, to inspire, to connect, and entertain. And I can tell you, at least for me, you've done all four of those things so far in the last hour. So I appreciate that. I'd like to close out by just each of you just a kind of parting thought on the topic, anything you want to share, and try to ensure that the listeners we have and the people that do listen and tune in that get educated. Anything you want to share, and we'll just kind of round robin, and then we'll close out. So we'll start. I guess we'll start with Dion. He's been a little quieter in the last few minutes, so.
That's because I'm not as buzzed up as all you guys. No, I kind of circle back to what Mariel said, as far as, having that link. That was our number one priority, was to get middle mile service to us. And it was kind of, couldn't find it. There was really no providers that were, it took us probably 8 months to find somebody that was going to be reliably and provide a legit service where we owned the fiber from that exchange all the way to the reservation. And that was our goal. There was another provider that wanted to, have us basically build their fiber from a town 78 miles south of us all the way up to us. And that was for them, a gold mine if we would have went with that. Because as soon as, this got through, and if it does get through, we have a couple people who want to, jump on to that fiber that we have and lease some dark fiber from us. So we have, more revenue streams coming in off other areas. So owning your infrastructure, I think, is a big deal, and not, leasing off somebody else or letting somebody else own it for you.
Justin, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Yeah, no, I think I would just say, I wanted to thank everybody for the perspectives, because I think it's always great to hear more perspectives and more thoughts on how this should work. And then I think that concept of making sure that the tribe is owning the asset is 100% right, because even to Jesse's point, it doesn't have to be necessarily about making money, but also maybe it can be a way to make kind of cost neutral to the tribe. So it's not, because all the tribes have a lot of cost centers, but just cost neutral to the tribe in a way to serve their people. So it's look for those options. And I think that's it's that message has kind of been pervasive throughout. And I think that's been great.
Jesse.
Man, got to build off Justin and Dion. Owning infrastructure is important. As Justin said, we're protecting that sovereignty. I guess my last parting thought is that, speaking of tribes and tribal nations, we have agency. We have power, we have sovereignty that we should be exercising at all times. And I guess I'm really speaking to the small rural tribes, is that you all deserve the absolute best. You should not settle for what your vendor or anybody else says that they think you can get. I think the tribes deserve absolutely everything they can possibly ask for and should. And sit down and justify why. I mean, and really think about why they deserve that. So I guess that's my parting thought, is they deserve it all.
Awesome. And to the person who rallied everybody to get everybody on this conversation, I can't thank you enough. Mariel, parting thoughts from you.
Too deep in the beer, man. Just a lot of gratitude. It's not easy to do what you all do. It's not easy to be the bridge between two different worlds, two different systems, two different cultures, whether you're bridging your community or neighboring community and the world of tech or the world of DC, or whatever it is, to be willing to be that champion and be that interface and make things work. There's not always a lot of appreciation of what you're doing out on the other side of the fence, especially on a granular level. And I don't know, I'll be cheesy. I'll be all NorCal on this. I see you. I see what you're doing, and I'm odd.
Well, thank all of you for joining us on our Beer and Broadband. You can catch us on Spotify, not Apple TV, on Apple and on YouTube. And we look forward to the next episode for continuing conversations, good people, and good beer. Cheers.